Welcome to Final Fights, brought to you by Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is Chris Cut Me Kelly.
Hi, everybody.
I gotta tell you, so I watched this movie in the 80s, I watched this movie in the 90s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and then I watched this a lot to get ready for it, this final fight between Rocky and Apollo Creed, Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed. I'm watching it today, and at the end, at the 14th round, when they're just going at it, when Rocky gets up and with the ribs and when Apollo's ribs are hurt, I got a little choked up. I have watched this fight so many times, and the Rocky franchise has been, between Rocky and Creed, I love all of them. And I watch this, and every time I get choked up. This is a heck of a final fight.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the greatest fights in cinematic history. I think everybody can relate to the character of Rocky Balboa because at one point in time, we've all been the underdog that has at least attempted to do something better than what we are. So I think that's what makes this movie so relatable. And then to actually see the final showdown between Apollo and Rocky. Apollo is clearly the way better fighter. I don't know if you could say way better, but
he is
more experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 5 more sequels that could settle that question. But
I mean, in this fight,
movie, yeah.
I mean, just the way. I mean, he took this fight for granted. He was showboating in the beginning. He's just sort of. There's one part in this. He lands 14 jabs in a row to Rocky's head. So I think he took it kind of lightly. And then when he got floored in the first round, that probably shook him up. And then what I find most impressive about Apollo is he got knocked down the first time ever. He argued. So I went and I found a round for round. A bunch of judges actually scored this fight. And all the judges score 1 and 2 for Rocky. And then the rest of the rounds that we see, because it skips ahead from round 2 to round 7, then it goes round 8, then round 13. We get glimpses of everything. Apollo's cardio is sick. I mean, so is Rocky's. But for a guy who didn't really prepare for this fight, I'm like and also Carl Weathers' physicality in this fight. I mean, normally when you watch actors fight, you're kind of, you understand it because they're not professional fighters. But his footwork on the overhead shots, he's really impressive in this movie, Carl Weathers.
Yeah, he's also, instead of hitting like once or just hitting like one quick one, he's also doing 2 hits at once. If you watch him, he's like pow, 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 pow. He just keeps hitting him one right after the other. He keeps pummeling Rocky.
And then when he floors Rocky, he throws that jab. When he throws a left jab, then a straight right and floors Rocky. I mean, yeah, punches and bunches. It's pretty neat watching that. And, you know, you've done a bunch of research on this, I'm sure. So when they first started this thing, they're like, we'll just get in there and box.
And we all know what that looks like. It just looks like a fight at the OK Corral. It's like, and nobody wants to actually hit each other. But Sylvester Stallone has been very vocal about how he actually wanted to be physically hit. Now, whether or not that's a good decision, especially when you're shooting multiple different takes, but he got the crap kicked out of him in this movie.
And I think that's what adds to it. Is just the punches themselves. Now, I am certain that Carl Weathers was throwing at about 15% if he's connecting with real punches. Because do you remember on Creed, the behind-the-scenes footage where the guy threw about a 30% punch and knocked out Michael B. Jordan in real life? Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. So, yeah, I mean, he definitely... What I like about this is you can tell that this final fight and this whole thing leading to it is a passion project. And I found out something interesting. So Chuck Wepner, in 1975, he had a title fight against Muhammad Ali. And so Chuck Wepner was almost the same as Rocky. He was known for his toughness, but he got cut a lot more. I think he had something like 378 stitches in his life. He was a bleeder. 3rd round TKO due to cut. 5th round TKO due to cut. When he fought Ali didn't really take it seriously, and Wepner actually trained. He went up to the mountains and trained. And he got a 9th round knockdown against Ali. Ali said that Wepner was stepping on his foot. But then he got stopped a few seconds before the 15th round. And that happened in 75. And then Stallone started writing the script. And then Rocky was made. But it's interesting. Stallone nowadays says that didn't give him any inspiration for the script. And no, we can't call him a liar. But it's a big coincidence, I would say.
Yeah, that's a massive coincidence that the exact same story happened right before Rocky was made.
Yeah, just 2 really tough dudes went up against physically dominating champions and did pretty good.
Yes, they did. I know that Sylvester Stallone, before he was saying that he was in the crowd during the Chuck Wepner fight, but he may have changed it over time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I remember that distinctively as a younger man, and I remember him saying something similar to that on the commentary years ago.
Oh, so maybe there's a few different stories floating around.
I'm sure over time he's probably changed it a little bit here and there, but I mean it's an underdog story regardless.
And I love the extras in this. They only had about 50 extras, and they had a bunch of cardboard cutouts.
Yeah.
In this scene.
On the commentary that I watched, they said about how they had to move the extras from one spot to the other to make it look like there was more people. They also had to have a lot of people who were in wheelchairs. That's the reason why you never see anybody really getting up.
Oh, wow.
There's only a few shots where you can actually see the cameraman holding the camera and then directing the extra to move in front of him to get like a wipe.
Wow.
It's pretty funny if you I mean, from watching it now, if you have a DVD of it, if you watch probably a DVD, you probably can't get to it, but Blu-ray, you can definitely get a really clear shot of the cameraman and then directing the extra being like, all right, come on, go, go, go.
4K will not be good. But it's funny that you say that because we talked about the movie Driven. That's going to be on the podcast. This will be out before then. But you can see the AD in the background moving people because they were in real crowds. And then Megan and I talked about the final fight in Snatch, and they didn't have enough extras for that either, so they had to keep shuffling them around. So I love that that's a theme in these smaller, well, Driven wasn't a smaller film, but I just love the idea of ADs moving extras around. It just makes me happy.
It's fun to see that. And you understand why whenever you're watching the movie that in reality, people watching the movie, most people wouldn't catch that because it's a massive fight scene that you're watching and your eye should be on the fight, not exactly the guy in the background.
Yeah. I mean, if you're watching the guy in the back, so I find I watch the background when I've watched the movie 10 times, but not on the first time. If you notice the background on the first time, you're in trouble.
Yeah, the movie didn't do its job if you're noticing that small things in the beginning.
And there's a couple details I love, and I'm sure you've also heard about this, but I love that Rocky's shorts are a different color.
Yes, that's actually a real mistake.
Yeah.
The real place did print the trunks backwards, and they decided to just write that in there because it does add to the movie about how nobody really cares about Rocky, and they're like, oh, the guy says, don't worry about it, just give him a good show.
Yeah.
No one's gonna be caring about the color of your trunks, kid. He's
so
like,
imagine this, Chris. You're a Steadicam operator.
Oh, geez.
And you're supposed to film, or I guess Panaglide, or because Panaglide was still around in 78, and then in 80, that's when Steadicam took a big jump with The Shining. But you're one of the operators. You're a camera operator. And you are the guy responsible for filming this fight. You're in the ring with Sylvester and Carl. And they're like, so I'll do this, and then he'll do this, and then I'll do this. You would lose your mind.
I don't know what I would do, like jumping back and forth. Like, I shot it. How did it look? Like shit. I don't know. You'll see the footage when you see it, man.
Why are you filming his feet the entire time? Because Carl hit me. And you know what's funny? So Sylvester Stallone went home that night and wrote 32 pages of lefts and rights. So they eventually planned this entire fight scene out. But I love that how iconic this fight is. So I went through all the Rocky fights ranked, and this is number one on all of them.
Of course, yeah.
And I just love that this fight, since Sylvester Stallone was so new, he's like, yeah, I'll just get in and throw some punches. Like, we'll do that, I'll do this. Yeah. And then they're like, no.
Like, clearly, son, you've never understood how that actually works. We have to move a camera around you, and we have to make it look kind of good. And
your camera ops, please, no. Please. But
yeah.
I gotta tell you, the main theme in this boxing match is working Apollo's ribs. They want Rocky to work Apollo's sides, ribs, kidneys, stomach.
Yes, because he keeps leaving them open every time Apollo throws a punch. He leaves his ribs open. So if Rocky is to hit him in the side, breaks his ribs, it will cut off his breathing, and then thus Rocky would win the fight, which is what Mickey tells him.
And I gotta tell you, so when I used to box, and it was like backyard boxing, you know those videos? I did a lot of that. And I remember the first time I got hit like that.
Hurt like crap.
I never trained. I would watch videotapes, but I just was the guy who would put on gloves and go box. And one time, this guy just obliterated my ribs, and I just fell on the ground. I was like, "You got me." Like, I wasn't even mad. I was in a lot of pain, and everyone was yelling and everything, and everyone thought I would be really mad about it. But I'm like, "You taught me a very important lesson today." I was like, maybe I should block my stomach and ribs. So when I watch this now and I see Rocky working his ribs, I love it. And I also love how successful Apollo was with his jab, and that forced Rocky to lunge in and miss. There's some authenticity to this. And actually, there's a lot more authenticity to this fight than I remembered. Maybe because I've blended in Rocky 4 in my head, which is, I love Rocky 4, but you watch between Drago and Rocky, they punch each other's heads off.
I mean, it looks like you're watching a massacre on television.
Yeah, like Rocky's head should be off of his shoulders in Rocky 4.
Quite literally, I believe that Ivan Drago, I always forget. It's like 18,000 pounds per square inch. It's like, that would literally decapitate a man.
Someone in the round, people catch baseballs in the stands? Someone would catch Rocky's head. It would go into the upper decks. And someone would take that thing and put it in a glass case, and that would be their souvenir. Like, I'd have Drago sign it.
Paulie frowns, and he's like, no more snow cones.
But this fight, though, now, did you ever, when you watch this again, I'm not saying, for a movie, it's very believable. Not in real life. Because obviously, you can't recreate a real-life fight. If you do a real-life fight or boxing match on screen, it's not going to be as exhilarating. But did this surprise you that it was kind of grounded in the world? Or did you always know that?
Oh, no, I always thought that this movie was very, raw, I guess is the best way to put it. I always felt that way ever since I was a kid watching it. It has to do with how realistic that Sylvester Stallone wanted to make the movie, and a lot to do with the budget. They didn't really have the money to do the big special effects that they could possibly have done. But I've always loved the way it looked and the way it felt. You felt like you were actually watching something real that did happen. And I've always loved that about this movie. And it's, like I said, I watched it several times this morning, and I still felt the same way. It still gave me chills, especially the ending, whenever Adrian is running through the crowd and the journalist asks Rocky, how you just fought Apollo Creed, one of the greatest boxers of all time. How do you feel? And he's like, I'm all right. Adrian!
Yep.
It's like, it's so beautiful. And then the first thing he says when he sees Adrian, she's like, Rocky. And he's like, what happened to your hat?
Yeah.
I love that he's just so oblivious to what he just did that the first thing he thinks of is, what happened to the hat? And she's like, I love you too. And then, he actually says, this was a trivia that I heard was, he actually doesn't say, I love you. He says, I love yous too.
I love yous too.
I was like, I was really impressed with that because I'd never caught that. But that was part of a trivia question that a friend of mine created his own Rocky trivia based off of his love of all these films. And I lost royally because I didn't realize there were so many intricate details in Rocky's speech.
That's not fair, though. That's like I do a Deep Blue Sea trivia.
And
I'm like, how many pens did LL Cool J have in his chef's coat?
Now, to be fair, if anybody won a trivia match in Deep Blue Sea against you, I think it'd be time to hang it up there, Mark.
Yeah, that would never happen. I beat the director in a trivia. I took on the writer, the director, and the entire cast, and I won. The production
took on Thomas
designer.
Jane. He beat me up, but I won still.
The production designer, I beat him 15-0. And I guess back to Rocky, one of the things I like most about it is the way they were able to work around the budget. And a lot of that was keeping the camera on the ground and shooting through the ropes so they didn't have to get as much of the background in the shot. I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah.
I think there's only 2 overhead shots, if I'm not mistaken. And those are very tight. They're tight around the ring. You only see so much on the outside of the ring. That way they could just kind of space the extras out. And I believe also a lot of the extras were taken from, used from the local hospital.
Extras?
From the local hospital. Wow. And that's why you see a lot of nurses also as the extras.
That's amazing. And I think
it's a true story.
The overhead shot there's one in the first round, which makes sense to give you a geography of the ring, which is smart filmmaking. And I don't know. For some reason, when I think about recent boxing matches, there's a lot more Steadicam, they're a lot more polished. But for some reason,